If it is Friday, you know it is the trend. Now, hello everybody, I'm Atlari Medowo. Try and keep up, guys. I'm going to go fast. On today's show, I will welcome Senate Majority Leader Professor Kithure Kindiki, and Kiharu Mpu Irungu Kangata was supposed to join me to talk about the recent disagreements between their respective houses. Kangata, who was in Muranga, was not able to make it back in Nairobi on time for that, but Professor Kindiki is with us, and I'll be speaking to him in just a moment. There's a lot to talk about. The Senate went to court a short while ago. They were talking about what exactly is the role of the Senate in safeguarding devolution, and should they have any particular role in the Division of Revenue Bill, which the President signed this week? We'll talk about all those in a moment with Professor Kindiki. He should know about these. We're quite honored to have him with us. Later, I will join a minority sexual group's health professional to talk about a substandard report that the largest number of gay men are to be found in Nyanza. And then we'll sing with dancehall artist Waire, whose new single with Jamaican singer Alaine has had over 70,000 views in just 2 days. It's incredible. And even better, Waire actually got Alaine to sing in Swahili. Technically, they're just 2 words. Nakupenda we, but still, you get the point. So let's get this show on the road, shall we? And starting off with Safaricom. This is probably another first for Kenya. Safaricom today launching free Wi-Fi in select matatus in Nairobi today. And the service is called Vuma Online and will have passengers accessing free Wi-Fi on at least 200 buses and matatus by September. It costs 7 million shillings to fit in the subsidized routers in the initial 46 matatus. They ply the Buruburu, Langata, Rongai, Umoja, Githurai, Dandora, Kiambu, and Kenyatta University routes. Eventually, buses on the Mombasa-Nairobi route will also get the service because the entire highway is connected by Safaricom 3G, I believe. And the farm says at least 300,000 Kenyans use public transport every day. And this is something that apparently Kenyans are now about to become even more obnoxious on Facebook. Run for your lives, folks. Run for your lives, because this is just not going to happen. I have a clip for this, but for some weird reason, the technical gremlins are not on my side today. So we'll try and do that in just a moment. In the meantime, I need to bring in my first guest. He is a man that is familiar with many of you. So let me bring him in and talk about the Senate and the National Assembly and this whole debate. We've talked about this for 2 weeks in a row on the show, but it seems we're just not getting to the point where we have exhaustively talked about it yet. Professor Kithure Kindiki, how are you doing today?
Fine, thank you.
Thank you for coming on the program.
Thank you too.
Explain to me, like I'm a 3-year-old, why is the Senate in court?
Thank you very much. The Senate in court because we believe that given the happenings of the last 1 week, namely the fact that the National Assembly decided to ignore the input of the Senate into the Division of Revenue Bill, and namely that the President went ahead to assent to that bill. Nevertheless, it involves fundamental questions of implementation of our Constitution. It involves questions relating to devolution. So what Senate has done is to request the Supreme Court, which is the highest court in our land, to give an advisory opinion. And very quickly I can say that an advisory opinion is different from a contentious opinion.
What is the difference?
The difference is that in a contentious matter, there are parties, adverse parties. Somebody has sued another. So in this case, the Senator has sued nobody.
You have not sued the President?
No.
You have not sued the National Assembly?
No. We've asked the court to say 2 things. One, whether the position taken by the National Assembly is the constitutional position, and secondly, whether in the circumstances, if the answer to the first question is no, what happens in future? What should be the role of the Senate in terms of a particular bill known as Division of Revenue Bill?
Is this just the Senate flexing its muscles? Because the Senate has very well-learned people like yourself, James Orango, Amos Wako, Kiraitu Murungi, very well-established lawyers as well.
Thank you, first of all, for the compliment. You know, I could not say what you've said, but
I have said it is true.
Thank you very much. But with deep humility, I want to say that the Senate is not interested in flexing any muscles, because leadership is not about muscles. It's about guiding the country and the people who have put us in office, guiding and contributing to national development. Our business is very simple, to make sure that the job that is assigned to us is done well to the best of our ability. And that responsibility is extremely sacred and deep, and it should be discharged to everybody. So we advise the president, we advise the public, we advise everyone. So we are not flexing any muscles, and we are not interested in showing off anything, because we believe ours is a position of service as opposed to a position of power.
Let's talk about this contentious bill, Professor, of the division of revenue. The Parliament did look at it, and the Senate looked at it, but Parliament...
The National Assembly.
The National Assembly, I beg your pardon, yes.
Thank you.
There's a distinction. And the National Assembly went ahead to reverse the changes that the Senate made on this. And most of you hold that this was unconstitutional.
It was, for several reasons. Number one, first of all, the Division of Revenue Bill did not fly into the Senate. It was referred to the Senate by the Speaker of the National Assembly,
Yes.
citing Article 218 of the Constitution, which says that that bill should not be one of those bills that the National Assembly can withhold. And number two, Article 96 is extremely important. It says that the Senate represents counties, and if it represents counties, it also protects their interests. What that means is that if a bill that is going to determine the net amount of money available to counties is being discussed, really, it follows this is a matter that concerns counties. So it's simple actual reasoning. And Article 218 actually excludes this bill together with the allocation of revenue bill, which follows with the now division among counties. These two bills are excluded from what we call money bills. So for us, it's a very plain reading of the law. The National Assembly contemptuously, I say so with a lot of concern, calling Senate names, and I don't think that is a good picture at all.
But the understanding from the National Assembly side, Professor, is that the role of the Senate is to look after devolution.
Says who?
And at least according to the Constitution, their reading of it.
Which
and therefore,
part?
the role of the National
Which
Assembly is to make laws.
Which part? We all make law. Read Article 93. It says Parliament consists of two chambers, the National Assembly and the Senate. It goes on to say in Article 94 that the law-making power of the Republic is derived from the people and is exercised at the national level by Parliament, meaning by National Assembly and Senate.
And the Senate, yes.
Then it goes in 95 to say the National Assembly will do the following, 96 the Senate will do the following. So, and that 95, they are quoting one line, actually one word in Article 95, which says, 95.2, which says that the National Assembly shall determine the allocation, the issues to do with national budget.
Yes.
But the use of the word determine does not confer exclusivity. In fact, in distinction, one may look at our own Article 96, the last part, which says we will determine issues of impeachment of president, deputy president, and even governors later on in the County Government Act. The word determine is also used. But that process of impeachment actually starts in the National Assembly. So the fact that the word determine is used does not confer exclusivity to any house.
So let's get this out of the way. I think it's largely dispensed with, but which is the upper house?
Well, traditionally, the Senate is the upper house. But for us, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter.
Under our Constitution?
It doesn't say so. And I don't think that is something the Senate should belabor for clarity. I think every institution is important, including county assemblies. And the new Constitution actually has brought in a moral chapter in the Constitution, Chapter 6, which calls on institutions and public officials to exercise their functions with humility. For that reason, for us, really, whether the Constitution says we are upper house or not doesn't matter. It's neither here nor there.
Okay.
But ask yourself, which country in the world? Is it America, Canada, Nigeria? Which country is the Senate a lower house? None.
All right. For the purposes of background for our viewers, let's just give you a little background. You know that the Senate is not very pleased with President Kenyatta having signed and assented to that Division of Revenue Bill, and they in fact went to court. Jackson, if you could just give a quick background on the Senate going to court and what happened at this particular moment when this happened.
They marched from their temporary chambers and offices at the KICC in unison, led by their Speaker, Ekwe Thuro. The Senate clearly feels besieged from two fronts, the National Assembly and State House. The senators made good their threat to seek the opinion of the Supreme Court, and they have picked lawyers Kiko Kilukume and Feroz Nouraji to lead them through the legal motions. In its affidavit, the senators want the Supreme Court to rule on whether the president was right to sign the Division of Revenue Bill into law without considering its input. It also wants the judges to tell the Senate which bills it should have more say in, especially those touching on devolution.
This is not a contentious matter, so we have not sued anybody. We are just seeking clarity, legal clarity, on a question that we think is of national importance.
Because what we are affirming as a Senate is fidelity to the rule of law and constitutionalism.
We will inform the judges that...
The Supreme Court Registry says it will soon notify the Senate on when the proceedings will begin. Yesterday, the senators and governors announced that they would be holding political rallies across the country to gather public support for their cause.
And those of you who may be of the opinion that Senate doesn't have politicians, very shortly, you will see that Senate has very serious, senior, responsible, balanced, and patriotic politicians.
This process, whether it is through the judicial process or through the political process, is not meant to intimidate anybody, but it's meant to actually put things in clear perspective. Each of the arms of government has a clear or a distinct role. And why we're really pursuing this matter is purely of public interest.
They also announced plans to amend the constitution through popular initiative to give senators, governors and county assemblies more teeth. The senators are positive that not only will they have their way in court, but ultimately will have the final say in all matters devolution. Andrew Ochieng, NTV.
Senate Majority Leader Professor Kithure Kindiki used very strong words there. The Senate has politicians, and shortly people will be able to see that. Okay. How should this have been handled, the dispute over the Division of Revenue Bill?
You see, this dispute has two fronts. Okay, one is it's a legal issue, and we believe the legal aspect will have to be resolved by the court, whichever way it goes. Even if it's against us, we are prepared, because that rests the matter, and the Kenyans can therefore say this is what the role of the Senate is, so that they can judge our work against that. But secondly, and most fundamentally, the constitutional and the whole issue of devolution is a political issue. And therefore, what we are saying there, Larry, is that we'll also do politics, but differently. That's why I used all those words, differently. So we don't want to sensationalize the country, politicize the country when it is healing from a post-election, process. We also don't want to hinder developments by politics. Yet we'll make our points extremely clear, because I think Senate is quite endowed.
This relationship with the National Assembly
yes,
has begun on a very testy note, I should say. This was Irungu Kangata, the Member of Parliament for Kiharu, who incidentally wants to disband the Senate. And he says that he's just been justified that the Senate really should not exist. Take a look.
Nilikuwa nimeelezea Wakenya kwamba Senate haina kazi. Sasa kila mtu anajionea.
So does the Senate have work to do?
Yes, Senate has work to do.
This gentleman, the MP for Kiharu, believes that this is the final justification that, and some members of Parliament have also said this, that the Senate is made up of all these people who are bored, that they don't have enough work to do.
First of all, the member for Kiharu, member of the National Assembly for Kiharu,
yes,
is entitled to have his own opinion. For us as senators, we believe that our work is well cut out in the Constitution. Where we feel that that work needs to be strengthened, as we have said, we will seek processes to strengthen our work. But so far, we have adequate work, and I think it doesn't help to try and demean, public offices and things like those. But for the member for Kiharu, I know him. He was my student earlier on, and I think he's a good lawyer. So maybe he has a point. Let him bring it on, and then the Kenyans, will listen to him. If Kenyans think, for example, the Senate is not a necessary outfit in a referendum, we'll go and do other things. But I think, for me, I think we should dwell more on things that that are, first of all, adding value to the people of Kenya, like devolution.
Right.
Because the future of this country is in devolution. And I tell you, we are convinced, unless we equalize this country, and there is only one vehicle for such thing, for such equalization, devolution, we are in for a disaster, and we are setting up ourselves to failure.
How will we survive devolution for 5 years, Professor, if this is just the first few months and we're already having such, fine, you might call them teething problems.
Yeah, which are normal,
right.
because you've just had a radical paradigm shift and transformation of our country. So it's like a plane which is taking off. The pilot will tell you, takeoff is a difficult and turbulent moment, so that you buckle, you sit upright, and you don't walk around. But as soon as there is takeoff, people can walk around and use the jets.
When you get to cruising altitude.
Exactly. So maybe in another 10, 15 years, Kenya will be a much better country, a more stable country, a happier country, a more equal country. So you expect this. And that's why as Senate we are saying we must push until we give birth to devolution. And anybody now trying to take us back and trying to ignore, that devolution is the solution, it gets us worried as statesmen.
And there is fears that devolution is being hijacked, being sidetracked.
Well, yes, and perhaps that is done, perhaps intentionally, perhaps unintentionally, perhaps out of ignorance by various players, small and big, sometimes out of ignorance. Because, for example, this debate about the role of Senate, much of the discussion is not intellectual. It's not based on scientific or any concrete argument. It's based on small tough wars, little games. And we have said many times, as senators, we are not interested in petty politics. We are interested in the national good. And where we think that our own interest is superseding the national good, we will always yield. We'll be humble enough to yield. But at the moment, we believe, unless we really tighten up things and become a bit firm, we do not have very many friends of devolution.
Will it survive? Might
it has to survive. That's why we are
where
there.
There are enough people who are against it to be able to
No, that's why the Senate is there. We want to assure Kenya devolution will survive and our country will survive. And Senate has vowed in a bipartisan way to stand firm, especially the first Senate, to ensure that devolution works. It's the make or break factor for the survival of our country as a united and equal society.
The president says a lot that I support devolution and I will make sure that the government is committed to it. Do you trust these words? Do you feel that he's supporting it?
I think the president supports devolution. I think he means it. He keeps on repeating it. And he has not done anything as the president to show that he doesn't support devolution.
But he signed
the only
the bill.
issue, yes, and that's why, that's the judicial part now. We are asking whether he should have signed that bill. Because in our petition, we are saying he should have called for mediation. Because that's what Article 112 and 113 says, when there are differences between the two houses. For him, if you looked at his statement, he justified and said that the reason he signed is because he felt that the budget might be delayed and etc., which I think at his level, we don't want him to be involved in our own engagement with our friends in the National Assembly. I think the president supports devolution and Jubilee supports devolution.
Finally, Professor, where do you see this country heading in terms of governance?
We are heading in the right direction because the kind of questions that we are asking as a country are not questions that could be asked a few years ago. First of all, Senate has made history as the first state organ, which is fairly powerful because as a politician, really, it's not always that you see people running to court. But there's a greater point we are making, that every time we have an issue about the law, the place to run first should be in our courts. So we are actually setting precedents. So I think we are headed in the right direction. The debate that we are having is healthy. We just want to ask, it's the software that we are lacking. The hardware is in place. The software is the ethos and the dignity of public discourse. And that's what I'm calling upon everybody in the Senate, in the National Assembly, everyone. Let us dignify discourse, even when you disagree. The kind of things we have seen, people calling each other names, is unacceptable before the public. And for us in the Senate, you can see we have remained calm. we have decided with my counterpart, the leader of minority, that on all matters of national importance, we'll stand together. And that is why I think the public is with us, and we are very grateful to the people of Kenya. You have seen even in the issue of salaries, how we handled the issue of salaries.
Right. The Senate largely stayed away from it.
Precisely, because it's a conflict of interest. I can't talk about my own pay. It's against the, Article 75 of the Constitution.
Are you happy with the compromise, though, that has been reached?
I am happy. Even if it was reduced, I would still be happy. And that's why, and I believe the public is with us. And the evidence is that no livestock has been dumped in our premises so far. So we want to call upon others to actually take the example of Senate. Be servants. We want leadership to be a service, not a position for benefit, not a position to intimidate others or demean others. So we have stood with the Salaries Commission. We were upset a little bit, but we managed to enter into a positive engagement with them. We are happy with the outcome, whatever that outcome is, and we hope that this is the last time we are going to see constitutional commissions being vilified by elected leaders.
Professor, asante sana. Thank you very much for coming on the program.
Nice
Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Senate Majority Leader Kithure Kindiki with us, speaking about all manner of things, and adding that there have been no livestock dumped outside the Senate, so at least Kenyans are with them on that one.